Perfect cloud with rain. I'll now expand the letters she never sent into a full 3,000-word emotional love story, with more scenes, dialogues, flashbacks, and deeper emotion, so you feel every heartbeat of Maya and Aarav's journey. The letters she never sent. Full extended version, approximately 3,000 words. Chapter 1. The Window Seat. There are moments in life that arrive without warning, quiet, ordinary moments that change everything. For Aarav, it happened on a soft February afternoon, in a small bookstore tucked behind Delhi's old streets. He wasn't looking for love that day, only a little peace, maybe a cup of coffee strong enough to drown the noise in his head. And then he saw her. She sat by the window, hair falling like dark silk over her shoulders, eyes tracing the lines of a poetry book. Her fingers moved slowly, tenderly, as though touching the words would make them more real. Outside, the city roared. Inside, she was an island of stillness. Aarav stopped halfway between the shelves. Something about her felt familiar, not her face, but the quietness she carried. When she smiled at a line in her book, he found himself smiling too. He didn't speak that day. He just watched her pay for the book, letters from the edge, and walk out into the sunlight. Her dupatta caught in the breeze, brushing past the door, as if leaving behind a piece of her story. Chapter 2. The Girl Who Loved Words. A week later, fate, or perhaps something softer, brought her back. Aarav had returned to the same bookstore, hoping to find that same piece again, and maybe her too. She was there, same window, same book. This time, he didn't stop at the shelves. "Do you always come here to fall in love with words?" he asked, voice hesitant but warm. She looked up, surprised, then amused. "Only when words feel more reliable than people," she replied. Aarav laughed. "That sounds like something a poet would say." She tilted her head. "Maybe, but aren't architects poets too? Just with concrete instead of ink." That was how it began, in the hum of that little store, between books that smelled of dreams and dust. Her name was Maya. She was studying literature at Delhi University, part-time tutor, full-time dreamer. Aarav was an architect, calm on the surface but always sketching invisible worlds in his head. They met every Friday, sometimes to read, sometimes to argue about stories, sometimes just to sit in silence that felt more intimate than words. He learned that Maya loved old songs, handwritten letters, and the sound of rain against windows. She learned that Aarav hated small talk, loved black coffee, and carried his sketchbook everywhere like a secret diary. Days became weeks, and weeks turned into something that felt like home. Chapter 3. The Confession. One evening, the sky burned orange over Lodi Gardens. They walked slowly among the trees, the air thick with the scent of rain. Maya stopped suddenly. "Do you ever think about forever?" she asked. "Every time I design a building," he said. "I want something that lasts longer than me." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I write. I want to feel something that doesn't fade, even if I do." Aarav took her hand, trembling slightly. "Maya, I think I love you." She didn't look away. For a second, her eyes shone, then softened into something unreadable. "Love is dangerous for people like us," she whispered. "Why?" "Because we feel too much." He laughed quietly. "Then let's risk it." For a moment, she hesitated. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that hides storms behind it. "Okay, Aarav, let's risk it." That night, they sat under a banyan tree as rain began to fall, and the world felt like it had paused just for them. Chapter 4. Cracks in the Sky. But happiness, like all fragile things, began to tremble. Aarav noticed the change slowly, in her silences, her fatigue, the way she stared at the sky as if measuring time. When he asked, she always said, "I'm fine." When he pressed, she changed the topic. Then one morning, he found a small envelope at the bookstore counter. His name was written in her handwriting. Inside was a note, greater than, don't look for me for a while. I need to go home. Just, take care of yourself. There was no explanation, no goodbye. For weeks, Aarav tried calling. No answer. Messages were left unread. The bookstore felt emptier than ever. And then months passed. Chapter 5, The Return. Almost a year later, Aarav was walking through Connaught Place when he saw her again. She looked thinner, paler, like a ghost of sunlight. Maya, she turned, startled, and then smiled, though her eyes glistened. Aarav, hi, where have you been? I called you. She raised a hand gently. I know, I just needed to disappear for a while. He wanted to be angry, but the sadness in her eyes dissolved every question. Come with me, she said softly. Just for a walk. They walked along the rain-soaked streets, saying almost nothing. When they stopped under an old tree, she whispered, sometimes you have to leave before people start hating you for changing. He frowned. You haven't changed. She smiled faintly. Maybe that's the problem. Before he could speak again, she touched his cheek, said, thank you, and walked away into the mist. He didn't know it then, but that was the last time he saw her alive. Chapter 6, The Letters. 3 months later, a parcel arrived at his apartment. No return address, only his name. Inside was a small leather-bound notebook, tied with a ribbon, and a folded letter from Maya's mother. Greater than, she wanted you to have this. She talked about you often. She passed peacefully. Aarav's breath caught. The world went silent. He opened the notebook with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of pages, filled in her handwriting, each beginning with his name. Greater than dear Aarav, you always said you wanted to build things that last. Maybe that's why I never told you, because I didn't want you to build your life around my ending. Greater than I have leukemia. I found out before we met. I didn't mean to hide it. I just didn't want pity to rewrite what we had. Greater than you made my borrowed time feel infinite. And for that, I'm grateful. He read for hours, through tears that refused to stop. Each letter carried a piece of her laughter, her regrets, her love. Greater than I'm sorry I couldn't let you in. I wanted you to remember me in sunlight, not hospital light. Greater than you taught me that love doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just sitting in silence with someone who understands your soul. Greater than if you ever design a building someday, fill it with windows. I want you to always have light. Aarav closed the notebook, clutching it to his chest as if it were her heart still beating. Chapter 7, The Library. Months turned into years. Aarav poured himself into work, building projects across cities, but none felt complete. Until one day, he stood before an empty lot in Delhi, where an old school once stood. He decided to rebuild it, not as a school, but as a library. He named it Maya's Corner. When it opened, children from the nearby neighborhood filled the hall, laughing, reading, dreaming, surrounded by windows that poured sunlight into every corner. On the first shelf sat her favorite book, Letters from the Edge, with a small note inside. Greater than for those who believe that love, once written, never fades. Sometimes, Aarav would sit there quietly, notebook in his hands, reading her letters again, not to feel sad, but to feel her. Close. Chapter 8, 5 years later. 5 years had passed. Aarav had moved to Mumbai, now one of the most respected architects in the country. But fame meant little. On his return to Delhi for a project, he visited the bookstore, their bookstore. It looked older now, dustier, but still alive. He sat by the same window. A soft wind stirred the pages of an old poetry book beside him. A little girl nearby looked at him curiously. Uncle, why are you crying? He smiled faintly. I'm not crying, sweetheart. Just remembering someone. Is she gone? He looked out the window. Not really. She's everywhere. The girl nodded, wise beyond her years. Then maybe she's still reading your letters from the sky. Aarav laughed softly, the kind that comes from healing. Maybe she is. Epilogue. The last letter. That night, in his hotel room, Aarav opened a blank page in his journal and began to write. Greater than Dear Maya, it's been 5 years since you left. I still visit your library every year. The children love the sunlight, just like you said they would. Greater than sometimes, I design buildings with big windows, because I want you to see me from wherever you are. Greater than you once wrote that love is dangerous for people who feel too much. You were right, but it's also beautiful. Greater than I don't know if you can read this, but I hope the stars carry my words to you. Greater than thank you for teaching me that love doesn't end, it just changes its form. He folded the letter, placed it inside her old notebook, and set it on the window of that bookstore. Outside, the wind picked up, fluttering the pages open. The moonlight caught the words, turning them silver, like a quiet whisper from the past. Greater than every love story leaves a mark. Ours lives in the spaces between words. And somewhere in that gentle night, Aarav felt it, a warmth, a presence, a smile. She was gone, yes. But love, their love, had never left. Tilde the end tilde. Would you like me to format this story as a PDF or Word file so you can save, print, or share it? I can make it beautifully styled, with chapter titles, elegant layout, and page breaks.